Libor already mentioned it. There is now some fresh news. The regulation was adopted officially, and we talked about it since about the beginning of this year. Probably in July, it became clear that it was going to happen, but still had to be formalized, and it's formalized now. It was published in the official journal on 7th of October.
No, 12th
of October. So that's really fresh news. So I'm glad with that. So now this means that European member states can actually waive or reduce track access charges to support railway undertakings in these difficult times. Stefan, I have a question for you. Do you know if there are any member states at this point already planning to implement this?
I think it's necessary to reduce charges in this current situation. It's an option, and we have the discussion on this topic. We have it in Austria, and I think for a certain time this is necessary as support for the railway system, of course. And it is, in my eyes, it's in line with the regulation, as railway traffic is really under pressure currently.
I also just heard from Libor that there's already a number of member states who said that they will definitely not use this option.
I mean, I'm not going to name and shame any, okay. Definitely not. But when I go back even to your question at the beginning of the conference, asking about the harmonization of the charges, I would say approach of the member states always depends on the economic situation of the state. If there is a robust budget that would allow to compensate the infrastructure manager for the losses incurred from the application of this regulation, it's not visible anymore, then of course there should be the readiness to apply and to put it in place, because that will be a relief for the railway undertakings. And we would all, as a business, is very much appreciated. But we are also realistic that we know that the current crisis has hit the economy of almost all the member states, so there may not be appetite or the reserves that would allow the member state to implement this regulation and put in place the reduction or the deferral of the track access charges. So I would say we expect there will be a number of the states that would go for that, but to be very realistic, we will see also a portion of the states, they would say, sorry, we can't simply do that.
Yeah. And is there also a role for the European Commission to encourage member states or to support them?
I mean, the regulation itself is encouragement. This is what it is about, and that's why I'm happy that since the beginning of the crisis, in our talks with the Commission, we also try to convince them that this is the right instrument, and we have been happy that there was a clean understanding that in order again to balance even the conditions between the sectors, so the rail and the road, for example, for us it will be a fantastic opportunity. So we have a regulation in place, so we can see this as an encouragement, but now the ball, so to say, is in the hands of the states.
Right. Andrew, I would like to ask you for your opinion, because from an economic point of view, the money needs to come from somewhere. It's up to the member states themselves to support these railway undertakings, but also then the infrastructure managers. Do you think this is a good idea economically?
Okay, I guess there's a number of issues. My work tends to focus on the economic implications of particularly the wear and tear element charges, which is potentially relatively low compared to some of the changes that might occur through markups and so on. It seems to me that there's kind of different issues. In the very short term, you want to support the sector. There can be different ways of doing that, one of which obviously is through access charges. And you want to maximise the flexibility of the ability to move things around during the crisis. So yeah, I think some suspension of kind of worrying too much about the kind of economic principles of the marginal cost for short-run purposes seems reasonable, and also for the view of actually ensuring that we actually have a competitive environment in the future, i.e. that operators are still there long term. So I think that's valuable, but I guess we don't want to lose sight of the kind of the longer term and where we do need the correct economic incentives. But yeah, it does seem there's some prospect in the short term to adjust things. But I mean, another aspect of track access charges is the underlying information they provide on the relative cost or the marginal cost of changing traffic levels. And I think where some countries will be considering adjusting their services during this time, it gives you valuable information on how much money actually will be saved by reducing services, where that's deemed something policymakers want to do.
Yeah, Andy, I'll come back to you to talk about the Baltic states, but I first want to point out a small difference, I think, in opinion, because both of you said it would be good for a certain time, and I heard you say something about future. Do you mean that this would be good for a longer term?
If you ask me, then I would say, I mean, I would say systemic and it's a permanent approach is to have, the balance approach towards the charging for the use of the infrastructure across all the modes. So not just because we have a crisis now that we have to immediately apply something for short term. No, what we would definitely wish to have from the long term perspective is the principle of the user pay charging embedded in the regulation for the inland waterways, the road, the railways, but also for the aviation, by the way. And this is where we see that there is a lot of the opportunities to fix the situation that on the rail side you have to pay for each and every train kilometer, and you don't have the very same situation on the side of the road, as our main competitor on the side of the freight mainly, but also the passenger services. So we would wish to have that balance here. And on top of that, we also promote yet another layer, and this is the polluter pay charging. And for that, you may remember that it's the end of 2019 where the Commission has presented a study about the full cost. And it was very clear that the railway is, in fact, the only transportation mode that is covering the majority of the external costs incurred by the operation of the railways. So we, again, would wish to have the very same situation in a stable manner, so the sustainable one for the future as the balance between the modes. Why I say so? Because if we would have achieved that, so we would, at the first place, obviously, be having or enjoying the better situation from the competitiveness perspective. So we'll be more competitive as such, and our cost structure will be more comparable with the cost structure of the road and the aviation. And on top of that, I said that it will be much more stable. So we would not need to talk about the temporary measures like we have now throughout the COVID crisis, but we will have something that will be really projectable to a number of years ahead of us. So back to this question now, we are appreciating what we have now. We know that it will end at the end of this year, or I may be extended for a few more months, but then it will stop. On the other hand, what we really wish to achieve is the revision of the Eurovignette directive, which now the German presidency is pursuing. So it's rolling, it's trying to move ahead, but with as a low number of exemptions as possible. And why I'm mentioning the exemptions from that? Because we have the situation that now everyone talks about the road electric vehicles as the zero emission vehicles. But I said, okay, but we are, as electric railway, we are already zero emission right now. And we are not exempted from paying the truck access charges at all. So let's put it on the same basis. Let's set the level playing field. So this is our call, which is more sustainable or more long-standing for the future.
Yeah. Stefan, do you agree with that? There would be other ways to deal with this in a more sustainable way?
Yes, of course. So with every edition of this track access charging conference, we discuss on fairness, competitiveness within the transport modes, the different transport modes. And of course, it must be a major goal of the transport policy to have, let's say, equal weapons for all the transport modes. But on the other hand, I think apart from that, we need to ensure on the railway sector that train operation is done also from a transport view, is done if we at least can pay marginal costs. If this is not possible, we always have to have in mind that probably another mode of transport might be the better option. So, of course, fairness, and of course, we need to ensure that all the other transport modes also cover their costs, which is not given nowadays, of course. But in my eyes, as more we try to optimize our charging system, the more we will have a role model for the other modes of transport. And I think that could be an option politically, we need a change of that, of course.